All right, everybody, and welcome back to round 2 of the GenCon Regional License Exam. I'm the new guy here, Espira, and of course, joined back by the amazing Levi from Alliteration Gaming. And I think we have a very exciting game 2 upon us. Don't you think so, Levi?
I think you picked a great time to join us, Espira. Welcome to the crowd. Yes, we have John Finn on Shigiraki and James Dye on Tokoyami. Really interesting. We have a dark horse and then a dark bird up against each other here. Some really interesting stuff going on. Shigiraki being one of those characters that always kind of shows up, right? At least as far as the numbers are concerned, people love this guy. But we've never seen him really come close anywhere to cracking the top tables, or the top cuts for that matter. So it's going to be really interesting to see if John Finn can maintain his spot up here as the day goes on. And of course, James Dye on Tokoyami, one of the most tried-and-true characters in the meta. Definitely going to be a hurdle for him, but one that he should absolutely expect when he's trying to maintain that spot at the top tables.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Shigiraki is one of those decks that you have to play differently against. He forces you to play kind of his game, but alternatively, Tokoyami is a deck that just kind of goes, and you kind of need to respect that speed. So it'll really be about who's able to kind of force the tempo of the game first, and who's really going to be able to take control from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it looks like we have James on the play here. Definitely where you want to be as Tokoyami, going first, going second. Almost feels like a whole different deck sometimes. At the same time, though, you know, we might see at least a little bit of leverage. It's kind of the golden rule that you don't attack Shigiraki on turn 2, right? You don't want to run into Evil Gaze on block response, blow up 2. But at the same time, is that something that Tokoyami ever really even cares about, given how easy it is for him to play his attacks? Ultimately depends on his checks and his build. You know, at least getting 3 out is a pretty good place to start. And you know, Tokoyami kind of being someone who's privy to the same shenanigans, right? You know, we see him really like the Evil Gaze and the Ice Storm half block tell you your turn is over. Give me my next turn to put out 50 damage on you again. Because at the end of the day, even if you deal 19 to Tokoyami on turn 2, it's irrelevant. If he gets to his next turn and you are not very defensively prepared for it, it's lights out regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, we saw a Dark Shadow being milled out here, so he will have the opportunity to at least dig and be pulled that out to start his aggression on turn 2 if he wants to go into it. I agree. I think a strong build turn 1, turn 2 will give him that protection he needs to not maybe fall behind if Shigiraki is able to blow up a few foundations. But if Tokoyami goes fast, and like you said, dealing 19 won't be enough. Shigaraki deals a lot of damage once and then slows down a little bit. And so on that front, it's going to take Shigiraki most likely a couple of turns of poking to be able to get through, where Tokoyami might be able to find his ins.
All right.
Yeah,
sure.
You know, stream jitters. Yeah, they happen.
Yep. Guess we grabbed the wrong card. It happens.
That would be the card you'd like to start with.
yeah, 100%, right? But yes, like the thing about Shigiraki is, you know, being able to poke for 7 damage or so, right, on a half block or something like that is really strong in a long game scenario over the course of multiple turns. Yeah. Right? But when you have pretty much 1 turn to finish Tokoyami before he finishes you, it's not nearly as valuable.
Exactly.
Right? So it's gonna be interesting to see how John really leverages that more grind game style that Shigiraki is really valuable in against a character that has zero interest in playing that type of game at all.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, Death has gotten fantastic tools within the past set to kind of give that EFB, which we see over here on John's side, will be great in mitigating that life total. You know, super regen is available to him as well, so we'll see. This is a really solid start for Tokoyami here. You know, going into Dark Shadow Ruin into the Summon Dark Shadow is a phenomenal start that can lend itself to a huge progression. So we'll just have to see here how deep James can dig into his deck and keep on aggroing here. But so far, there are a few defensive options here on John's side that can sort of start mitigating some of the things that are coming his way.
Absolutely. I mean, Shigiraki is a defensive option in his own right? You know, it's possible that nuking a foundation after we block this Dark Shadow Ruin, hopefully, is what actually slows down James's turn and stops him from getting there. But it ultimately depends on what kind of shenanigans. If we're holding an Evil Gaze, that's going to be a fantastic one as well. I am seeing one in his discard pile, but, you know, there's probably 4 in there.
Presumably, yeah.
Presumably. Yeah, John saying, hey, I got blue cards too, man. I got blue cards too, man. Yeah, I'm eager to see what kind of what kind of experience. I mean, obviously, sitting down in a regional Essex exam tournament. This is a very, very big event. You're expecting a lot of highly competitive play, a lot of highly competitive decks, and a lot of highly competitive players. The last thing you're probably expecting to see is a character like Shigiraki, right? Maybe you're expecting to see him a little bit, but at the same time, you more than likely have not been doing a lot of play testing against him.
Yeah.
Right? It's definitely not the thing that you've play tested against by any means, and have a lot of experience against, because it's just not one of those characters that's going to come up nearly as often.
Yeah. Looks here like we are checking our second evil gaze, so would have loved to have that in hand, but I totally agree with you. I mean, it's one of those things where you're not really playtesting against it, and every deck needs to play against Shigiraki a little bit differently because like the different defensive options that are available to the deck. So especially against Tokoyami, there are real questions in regards to like what is the right strategy in 100%. Regards to going into a slower turn, especially here where it looks like we are just wrapping that up here.
Yeah, opting to build no cards or play any other attacks after +3 to our check is a little strange. Maybe we're just, being very, very wary of Shigiraki's ability. At the same time, though, if you have no foundations, you're not exactly going to be able to do much as far as blocking his attacks goes, regardless of how much you've held all of the right zones, right? So John starting off with a cheerful uppercut. Very, very, very scary one. Obviously, the scariest thing about Death Shigiraki is that he can play float combo for that guaranteed 6, or he can also just play a million very, very fast, powerful low attacks.
Yep.
Which, of course, when you're overloaded, we've seen similar things with Nomu decks in the past as well, because they kind of opt in the same exact way, putting essentially an extra 5 damage, in quotation marks, on things, making them just as scary on the half block. Unfortunately, we're going to be failing our half block here, looking to stop the uppercut on an 8. Checking our 3, definitely not going to be anywhere close to passing. So we're going to be taking our 4 damage and then our 9 in total after Shigiraki's response hits us for another 5.
It's huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge damage. And then now, John going to be, 9 damage to a 20 health character is just shy of half of the equation, right?
Yep, so here we go, using the Shigiraki response, dealing the additional 5 here, and now we're at half life total. And that's the thing with these aggressive leaning characters, is that your life totals are so incredibly low that like one Shigiraki poke is half your there's the other evil gaze. I'm telling you, this deck is committed to making sure he checks all of them.
100%, yeah. So now, Johnson's in the right position, just built a couple cards, hold all the right zones he needs to stop a scary Tokoyami turn. And at the same time, I'm not sure if Tokoyami's going to be able to really, really go in very hard on the 2 foundations. Effectively, 1, if Shigiraki gets a full block in, which with, holding the cards he did, have to assume that he's held every zone here. Interesting that we opted not to use our Excited for Blood there, though, as Shigiraki, just opting to get that free card just seems like a really, really strong thing to do. I don't see any reason not to do it. And if you really feel that threatened, you can always just flip it and heal the 2/4 in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, 100%. And here we see James building out first before going into the giant ice one. So
Interesting. Checking the 5 either way. So, we're getting our double committal out of it regardless. Not sure if that really gives us any benefits, though. But regardless, this move is going to come down and at the very least stun 2, challenge John to be holding a high block in his hand. And I mean, at the very least, now that we've committed all of our foundations, Shigiraki's response does nothing.
True.
So actual pro plays here, right?
Yeah, and I think this is the first GenCon promo that we end up seeing played at this regional. I heard a number of players talking about how they were sliding those into their deck instantly the moment they got their hands on them.
Yep. Absolutely beautiful cards. I've gotten my hands on a couple of them so far, and they are truly a sight to behold. Yeah. Some of the pros of working the booth is you don't have as nearly as many lines to wait through
that is
when you're the one who opened the thing. So we're seeing a really interesting card here. We're seeing the acid fling come down here. Or the acid chop. I think it's the acid chop, yeah? Acid chop come down here, stuffing one into each other's cards pool, and then just being a flash attack. So it says, hey, have the high block, or take your 7 in total. Pretty scary spot to be in, because again, as we say, Shigiraki likes to poke once, get his burn in, and then build from there. But if our poke here puts James down to anything relatively low, a couple more moves are easily going to finish the equation. 11 life is not a lot. With 5 of it being gone on the half, or even 9 of it being gone on the full here, it's a really, really, really scary spot to be in. You know, at that point, any move, any more moves can really take you out. And with only a couple foundations ready, as Tokoyami here, it could very easily be lights out if John can put a couple more moves on the table.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, Shigiraki does the poking, but you can do anything in regards to continuing here and just forcing, you know, James is in a tough position, doesn't have a lot of resources available to himself to be able to defend himself. He's got that card stuffed in his card pool, which adds effectively just another speed into any attack John sends over. So just an off zone here at this point. And not having the appropriate block just means that this is basically lining up to be a game one win for John.
Yeah, we must full block everything at this point onwards, and it's not looking to be in a good position with one card in our card pool. Only a couple of foundations up. It's not impossible for John to play another move here. Although I have to wonder that the unfortunate part, of course, of starting with the acid chop there is we cannot use first day of class on it.
Yeah.
Although it's also possible that the Excited for Blood drew the Cheerful Uppercut. Maybe the chop was our only move in hand at the time, and it's just kind of, you know, we had to work with the cards we have been dealt. Either way, John's still really in a fortuitous position here. 2-21 is really good, but like we said, if you don't deal all 20 points to Tokoyami, he can take down, you know, an upwards of way more than 21 on a crackback.
That's the scary part here. If you overcommit and you don't get there, and then you're just like, okay, I'm no-handing against Tokoyami. That could be a scary place, but that's not what we're seeing here in this round one.
Looks
and
like we didn't have our low block, and we opted to just simply pick things up and move on to game two. So a very, very clean win for John here. Immediately digging to his sideboard, you're making sure to see what he pulls out here. You know, under the death symbol. Honestly, death is a really, really versatile symbol at this point. Set 2 has kind of really crept up its card pool and power level. You know, it's kind of one of those symbols that's more so identified by the couple characters that play it really well. But at the same time, it's still a very versatile and quality symbol in its own right. We're just really used to seeing it only on things like Ochako 2 or even Mineta 2, for example. But Shigiraki does play it like a champ. I think Shigiraki honestly, all of Shigiraki's symbols got a lot of leverage out of set 2. Fire, Death, and Evil, all card pools that have really upped the quality of their moves from Crimson Rampage.
Yeah, it gives you depth, gives you versatility, and it really allows you to kind of like play a more interesting game. I mean, especially on Death, in which you have a lot of cards that, mitigate your life total for some form of advantage, and they lend themselves incredibly well into each other, because anytime that you mitigate your life totals, you could be looking at some triggers off of the Excited for Bloods, off of your character, and it just lends itself really well to having wide options to mitigate what your opponent is doing against you.
Yeah, Excited for Blood is easily one of the strongest cards in the game right now. Probably the strongest foundation in the game right now. So it's kind of one of those cards that it almost has a coordinated effort style effect, not in power level, but in the sense of my symbol has just gotten so much increasing quality simply from being able to play this card. You know, I feel like it's, you know, it made Evil go from 0 to maybe not hero, but it certainly made it a lot better just by its standalone inclusion, because it's just a card that can impact a deck and a game so high simply from coming down onto the field.
Agreed, 100%. But here we will see another opportunity here for James to go first, and, you know, provided a bit of a wider build and kind of a more open turn 2 hand. We could see a much more tempo-oriented play lines from James.
Yeah, I mean, that is the way that Tokoyami wants to go, right? He wants to get a at least decent build on his turn 1 by going first, and then turn 2 just put as much damage out as he can before the opponent really gets a chance to stabilize. That is the strength of the character, is that he can really burst you down, kill you on very few foundations before you've stabilized, and it's a lot harder for you to block that many moves on your very few foundations because you are not getting +3 to your checks, ignoring your progressive difficulty, doing all these mechanics that Tokoyami is so famous for. You know, it's really all about jamming lethal down the opponent's throat before they even get a chance to play the game. However, it looks like James has actually opted to go second
Interesting.
this game. Really, really, really interesting. Going to see how that works out. Maybe he's kind of realized that maybe that's not the plan against Shigiraki.
Right.
Maybe that's not exactly how it's going to go down. So we're simply going to take the wider build, the extra cards, the character to be committed, etc., etc., etc. But still a solid 4 build for John here, and some pretty quality ones as well. I think I would have opted actually to try and build a Struggling with Studies before the second interview. Because League Interview is a card that you get the most value out of by just having one. It does have an additional effect in case you do have more than them, but it really, for the most part, has a soft, unique word on it.
Yeah. First form will do that to you.
Yeah, first form will absolutely do that to you. Very rare that you want to have first form on more than one card on your field, because you only get, spoiler alert, one first form. So right off the bat, a much better build for James. This is actually a perfect check for us, so we can commit our character and then get -1 damage on all of our moves.
Or all right,
maybe not.
Deciding here,
Thinking about
potentially opting on.
Thinking about it in the tank about it.
Okay.
Opting to not take it. Interesting. So the 3 foundation is going to come down. So almost matching John's build. Would have been very, very, very close had we jammed that ice gliding in. So now John looking to be in a pretty good spot here, right? As Shigiraki, you also would like to get your early game poke in before your opponent really stabilizes.
Yeah.
Right. If you can throw down 2 attacks turn 1 as Shigiraki, odds are at least one of them can get a half damage through, which really means you get 7, 8, 9 damage.
Basically full damage on any other character.
Exactly. So the League Interview going to come down first form. Make sure we check beautifully on this Cheerful Uppercut, and it's now going to be down to James to have that low block or not. And again, this just being a very, very fast move, but not as fast once Arrogant Disposition comes in, because it is a punch. Yep, commit for -3 to our punch is extremely clutch here.
Yeah, interesting to see if that was like main deck or something that he brought in from his sideboard, potentially.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things we see main decked more often than not, simply because it has value as a 6 check and a low block. But obviously, could have definitely sided some more copies in. So going for the full on a 4 with our Frigid Heat Wave and checking beautifully. So we'll see if John can put out another move here. But again, not having to commit anything on that block definitely makes it a little less attractive to shove another move down, because what happens when it's easily blocked as well. So we're just going to surrender, getting our damage in this turn, and opt for some powerful building. Unfortunate though that we lost our Cheerful Uppercut. Cheerful Uppercut being a very, very, very potent card, at the same time though being one of the most powerful defensive pieces in Shigaraki's kit. It is really, if you swing that mid attack on turn 2, it can be so devastating when you get that full block Shigaraki response, blow something up, and then put one in the card pool, which is actually better than like an Ice Storm Breaker 2 or something in most cases, because they want to build after that. So, Breaker 2, okay, they build their 0 on a 1, and then nothing happens, is a lot worse than having +1 on every foundation you're building for the rest of the turn, because the card pool stuff much outvalues the breaker in those scenarios.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep. So we're looking to build a couple foundations as James here.
I like this. I mean, if you don't have the gas, don't force it. Build out and make it so that the threat of Shigaraki blowing up your foundations doesn't set you back as hard.
Exactly. You always want to hold at least a few. Try and hold each block zone against a character like Shigaraki. Worst case scenario, he doubles up on 1. You do have to take some big damage, but you're at least forcing him to play 2 attacks at that point onwards. He's not just getting a free poke in right off the bat. So James actually supporting a very, very healthy stage right now. John supporting a healthy stage numbers-wise. 3 league interviews, not exactly the most valuable.
No, unfortunately, you do not get 3 first forms.
No, that's not quite how it works. However, his block checks have a lot of plus potential.
True, 100.
With obviously, the flip on league interview making the part of it that puts at least a little value on the board when you are doubling, or in this case, tripling up on them. Flip to get +1 to your block check is always very handy. So once again, we're going to see a Cheerful Uppercut come down into the face of an Arrogant Disposition, giving it -3 speed. Unfortunately, And then it looks like
still taking it though.
Looks like despite the -3 speed, we are opting to take the full 9, 4 from Uppercut, 5 from the Shigaraki response. Taking 9. Getting our excited for Blood Off. Seems like we just don't have the low block, unfortunately. That is the issue when it comes to fighting Shigaraki. If you're going to half block him like that, you might as well simply take the full. It's only a 2 damage difference. Not much in the grand scheme of things, especially if you're trying to sculpt, right? Hold on to your valuable attack cards as Tokoyami. So, and now we're getting some nice foundations here on John's field, especially the struggling studies. Struggling, one of the most powerful defensive pieces in the game right now. So strong. You know, obviously it being on water is so crazy. It gives Chaos even more nice defensive tools, but like we said, very, very sneakily, that card has death on it.
That it does.
That card has death on it.
So, I mean, going into James' turn, I mean, fantastic aggressive foundations. He's got 2 ways to be able to cycle out of his hand here. He's able to draw an additional card. He also has the lineage there, able to kind of damage pump if the opportunity presents itself. So, a good way to be able to kind of sculpt a hand going into his aggressive turn if he has the right pieces go off here. But opting to commit down to pay for the Ice Storm.
Yep, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right? We still have a whole lot of ability to find several cards throughout our latent skill, our calling for backup draw. That is also a Dark Shadow straight from hand. We have not milled to find one with Tokoyami yet either, which is kind of interesting. Because now he is committed as per the cost of Dark Shadow, so we actually can't find an additional one. Even if it's not in our discard pile all the time, we can go ahead and mill 5 and try to find it. And unfortunately, we're getting only 1 stat buff out of it because the Forcing Surrender is going to discard it from our card pool. Very, very unfortunately for James, our Tokoyami player here. We don't lose the current stat buff from it, but it will no longer apply to future ones.
Correct.
Because even though it's a static ability, it applies and then stops there, right? So a little differently from how statics might work in other card games, but that is how we function in the My Hero Academia.
Very notable rule.
Very, very, very notable rule. Yeah, absolutely. Any future moves played will not have that effect lingering in any kind of way. But at the same time, it will not go away. Even when Summon Dark Shadow leaves the card pool. So we are still maintaining our +1/+1 here. And I think it's back to James's enhance now as ours was flipping our Forcing Surrender. So got a couple things we can go through here. Our calling for backup is not going to be as valuable here since we'll have to discard, although we do have our latent skill still on board, try and find some more attack cards maybe. As well as Ice Storm not being able to be blocked by attack cards. So quite a few buttons available to us as James. Ice Gliding, another one of them as well. So we've got some more speed pump here.
Yeah, well, we'll make this one end a subsequent attack potentially faster.
And I mean, as John, you have to be feeling pretty comfortable here, all things considered. You know, we got rid of 1 Summon Dark Shadow. Worst case scenario, there's another one. We can get rid of that one as well. And then we've got a big fat 26 health. We've got our Shigiraki response. And we've got a super regen to go ahead and heal back any damage we might take as well. And if really worst case scenario comes to it, if we jam any more than 2 moves as James here, that Struggling with Studies is going to come in and be very, very relevant for a block pickup, clearing our card pool and giving us our block zone that we need back. Just so much work in one little spam foundation.
Yeah. Now lends itself incredibly well to finding the options that you need, and that's kind of what John needs right now. I mean, like we said, has some very strong foundations singularly, but if we look at it holistically, not too much to help mitigate a potential push turn from James here. And it does look like we'll actually be taking this going down to 21, but you know what? How about we gain some of that back and sit back at 24?
Yep, the power of Super Regen still a very, very, very strong card, especially paired alongside Excited for Blood. That is a hideous amount of healing in one deck.
And that's the one thing that's like one of the things that are huge about our card game is how significant 2 to 3 life feels when you're gaining it back.
Absolutely. So we're seeing a very interesting card come down here. Coming down here on a 7, chipping in 8, because even though it's gone, remember we did play our Summon Dark Shadow.
Yep.
So this card unfortunately is not going to be combo enhancing anytime soon. But we will at least get a big damage move onto the board. For essentially free because of our Summon Dark Shadow pumping up our check. So coming in as a 2 mid for 8, not the fastest move in the world for sure, but certainly a big damage move. But as John here, it's pretty easy for us. We have a flurry of mid blocks. We would love to stop.
Oh, of course.
Our cheerful uppercuts.
And if we have an evil gaze, just kind of slap onto that.
Our evil gazes, the options are vast here. If we're playing the decaying grip, the one that re-readies our Shigiraki, things could get even scarier.
Yeah, it's one of those things that a well-timed Evil Gaze could kind of just force like James in a position where like not he can get robbed
So
of
it looks
some
like
defensive
we're
pieces.
actually combo enhancing, even though we cannot. Attack, combo, attack, low attack means an attack and a low attack. So that's actually an incorrect combo enhance on that part there. Which looks like we might have realized that as we stopped milling, even though we didn't find 4 non-attack cards.
Yep.
I apologize. The combo enhance is the readying things.
Right,
The
and then the mill is the one that
just an
happens.
enhance.
Yeah, makes
and
sense.
we did mill our non-attack cards. So going for, again, one of the beautiful mid blocks in our deck with the plus ultra. And then the Shigiraki response coming down, asking us to blow up a ready foundation, which we only have a couple of. So actually a pretty tough choice here because our arrogant disposition is quite valuable against Shigiraki.
It's pretty good.
Playing all these punches. If there are any big Nomu attacks as well, those are more than likely more punches in our decks. Have to assume maybe Merciless Rush as a very popular choice in Shigiraki. Berserker Blow, another very, very, very good one as well. So definitely something that we would want to keep up, which we are doing, opting to go ahead and keep the the arrogant disposition, getting rid of our latent skill, and then simply passing after playing our 2 moves there, holding 4 cards again. It looks like, which again, at very low health against Shigiraki, it's hard to progress your build because you have to kind of maintain as many block zones as you can because that half block will just get you.
Yep, and stun here is going to be really solid and effectively kind of close out any defensive options James may have here. And then it's just about can John string together, similar to game 1, just a pair of attacks to be able to go through. I mean, just this with the death touch will kind of lend itself to James being at a very uncomfortable life total.
Yeah, absolutely.
1.
It is. It's a hard
if
spot
things
to be
stay
in.
the way they are.
It's the check was unfortunate. Might make our strings a little harder here. It looks like we did neglect to use our league interview. Despite having 3 of those bad boys on the field, we did not use our league interview.
Opted to no form it.
Opted to no form it. First form, not me. But of course, Turn to Dust, checking a 3 or not is still going to be a very, very potent attack.
Yep. So opting to lose the 2 health here, setting it to 9, and now this is now lethal.
Yeah, 9 is extremely lethal now as we've opted to lose the 2. So it's a pretty tough spot for James to be in. This being a 4 high, as we are completely committed out, we need the best high block available to us and the best check available to us for us to get there.
Yeah.
And now that it's got 2 speed, it's actually extremely unblockable.
Yep.
As far as I understand.
I don't believe we have 0 high mods.
Nope. Our best case scenario here is a plus ultra in hand and being at 1. But sadly, that is not anything close to what's occurring here. Our Turn to Dust is going to get there with its 5 damage, and Shigiraki is going to finish the game with his response for another 5 damage because unlike a lot of lose health abilities in the game, Shigiraki's is actually one that can reduce your rival below 0 and take them down.
That one does indeed just end the game, and the crumble touch gets there with Shigiraki being able to take it in a swift 2-0 over Tokoyami.
Very, very swift 2-0. Tokoyami, one of the characters to beat, right? So, like we said, definitely something you expect to see at the top tables as Shigiraki, and you don't exactly have the inverse effect on your opponent's side of the table. They are not expecting to see your Shigiraki, so we might see a lot of things happen where your opponent might not be used to playing against the character, and that can lead to some interesting things going on that, as the Dark Horse character, you can very much take advantage of, and I think that's a lot of what we saw right there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to play differently, and on multiple facets. You have to understand, hold the right block zones, because if I take a half block, I'm still taking effectively full damage.
More than full.
More than full. So you're actually consistently in a position where you have to be considerate of your opponent's play, and it only takes 1 card from Shigiraki to break through to put you in that uncomfortable position. And that's kind of where that play comes in, where there is value in understanding those rogue matchups, because there are some characters like Shigiraki that force the game to play out differently than they typically would. And that's just kind of what we saw here. 1 card created an opening that allowed for the closing of the game here.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, players who are very, very dedicated with these rogue characters, no matter how off meta they are, can always get there. This is a very, very player skill dependent game, and if you really, really commit to a character, you can certainly sit at the top tables with the best of the Asuis, with the best of the Tokoyamis, with your Shigiraki.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we're going to bring on our Shigiraki player here for a quick interview to cap off our round 2.
All right, welcome back, you guys. My name is Levi, and I have with me your winner of the round 2 recorded match, Mr. James Dye, playing Shigiraki. Sir, how are you feeling, man?
I'm feeling great. Feeling good.
Yeah. So I kind of pulled you in here because I saw a very interesting matchup, and I wanted to capitalize on that. You are playing Shigiraki today, sir. One of the more rogue characters, I think everyone would probably agree with. What has kind of been your inspiration to take the character? What's been your experience with him like? Is this something, like a passion project, something you've been playing for a very long time? I want to hear your whole story with him.
Yeah, so ever since the game first came out, I saw him and I saw he was kind of a different play style than a lot of other characters, and I think he rewarded maybe a little more slower tempo kind of gameplay, and it just fit my play style perfect. And I love disruption as well, so he's sitting there blowing up foundations, and I love doing that as well. So just playstyle wise, all around, he fit perfectly for me. And pretty much he's the only character I've played since the game came out. I've looked at other characters, and they just have different playstyles.
They don't do it for you.
Probably one of the coolest things about this game, and I've heard from every veteran of the game, is if you stick with a character long enough, you can probably get him there. And I was just like, challenge accepted. Let's do it.
That is absolutely something you can do, and that's actually something we talked about during the commentary of the game quite a bit as well. And I can definitely agree with everything you're saying. I'm very much a person who likes to, whenever I play video games, card games, fighting games, etc., I like to pick one thing, dedicate to it, and stick with it, regardless of how good it is. It's just got to be something I like, and that's enough to keep me in, right? And I also agree with you in the sense of playstyles. I like my mid-range. I like my tempo. It's certainly a very attractive character choice in a lot of ways for sure, regardless of what some people might tell you as far as how much he can cut it with the big boys. But I like to see, I like that you are confident in your ability to cut it with the big boys, and I'm really eager to see more of it today. You mentioned the veterans of the game. What is your experience with the game as a whole? Did you come in with MHA, played a lot of universes from the get-go? What's been your history like?
I started when MHA came out. So yeah, what's been out less than a year now. So I'm less than a year old, and I've been listening to the stories from veterans talking about the older system and everything, and just everything they've said about it has been true. It's just a great community. It's competitive and yet educational. Even in that match, there was a moment where I wanted to educate my opponent for a moment, and then I forgot where I was. I was just like, oh, wait a second.
Right.
99% of the time, I am totally educating because I love that part of the game. I love that part of the community. And then I had a, you know what? Oh, this is the one time I'm trying for a tournament. I'm trying to.
Gotta hold yourself back. We are at a very, very, it's easy to forget because everyone is so nice, so positive and energetic and welcoming. The community as a whole and the events as a whole as well. It's easy to forget that you're fighting for quite a lot on the line.
Right.
Right. But I want to see you keep fighting, man. I want to see you keep throwing down the good fight with your boy Shigiraki, and I'm eager to see you continue maintaining your spot at the top tables, hanging out with the top tier decks and the best of them.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, that has been your winner here, James Dye, Mr. Shigiraki himself. Continue to cheer him on at home, and we will be back shortly with you guys for another high-octane, exciting round 3 of play. Don't go anywhere.